you guys know the people out there that need our help. So hopefully you'll tag a friend, a family member, someone who needs to hear this type of information. I hope this blesses the lives of somebody who's in the depths of despair and depression. We're going to go through a little bit of research. I'm going to give you a lot of things that you can read up on yourself. The research is available to us, and in this knowledge, I want to empower you to use the knowledge to your advantage. The scientific evidence is there to realize and know that the gut health, the digestive health, and even our immune health is critically important for brain health. So I'm going to go through a case study. One of my patients I've been working with here now for a couple months who's been suffering with depression. In fact, it's major depressive disorder. This woman has been dealing with many different things, massive anxiety, sleep disorder, can barely sleep, wakes up in panic. She deals with or dealt with diarrhea for the last several years. Her major depressive disorder took a turn for the worst about 3 years ago, and there was, in working with her, we actually were discussing the fact that she had a bout with bed bugs, and so immediately I'm thinking infection. So that turned it for the worst. She'd already dealt with depression, postpartum depression before that, and had some emotional traumas throughout her life, as well as some physical traumas. To her opinion, most of her car accidents were minor whiplash injuries in her past. One of the major things that was, and when we evaluated her and looked at her spine, she had major trauma to her cervical spine, her neck. And I'll be talking about the importance of that as well in this presentation, so that people can realize the multiple contributing factors that play a part in the development of depression. But one of her injuries was actually the fact that she fell when she was around, I believe it was around 7 years old as a child, fell from a platform and fell onto a cinder block on her head, and so major injury to her head and neck from that. Had dealt with levels of depression throughout her life, got worse postpartum, and then got really worse after a bout with bed bugs. And ultimately, it's either the bed bugs caused an infection or the chemicals they used to get rid of these things was another one. She said that returning to her home after having gotten rid of those things and having those bugs exterminated was when she really noticed it take a turn for the worst. So again, help somebody out, get this word out to somebody. Let's help somebody who's in the depths of depression. So we understand that emotional traumas, thoughts, traumas, and toxins, and those are the 3 T's. Those are the principles of chiropractic. And I really want to kind of just applaud, the founders of chiropractic for the fact that they had the foresight to realize that in the future, science would prove that emotional traumas, we know that adverse childhood experiences. Give you an example personally to my life and my family's life. My mother lost her father in a fire at 8 years of age, and that adverse childhood experience is a major contributing factor to mental illness. Or adverse childhood experience can be a factor in many different aspects of life, but especially with mental illness. And my mom has dealt with depression, fibromyalgia, and things like that throughout her lifetime. So that was an example of that, but thoughts, traumas, and toxins, we understand that relationships, that losses, combat, military experiences. We live here in Clarksville, I live here in Clarksville, and the reality is our military members go through very emotional situations that they have to deal with in that line of work, and I applaud them for all the sacrifices they have made personally and family and everything else. So I thank them for their sacrifices for me to live in what I would consider as a fairly free country, although we could go down a rabbit hole in that aspect many times here recently. But going on here, physical traumas, cervical spine injuries are a major contributing factor that needs to be looked into, needs to be addressed. Cerebral fusion surgery is a known risk factor as well. If somebody has a fusion surgery, surgical fusion, though very seldom necessary, necessary when somebody breaks their neck possibly, has major dislocation, things like that. But the reality is for things like degenerative disc disease, we know that cervical fusions, neck surgeries that immobilize the spine are actually known to cause major depressive disorders. Degenerative disc disease would be another contributing factor there as well, playing a part in negatively impacting the brain function, neural feedback, and many other aspects. Toxic traumas, and these can be biotoxins, they can be infections, and we can throw into that chemical exposures as well. So we need to understand, and I would think the first thing we need to look at as I go through some of this and think about is the fact that we have knowledge available to us. I would wish that we would stop all funding for a lot of different research projects, cancer research, Alzheimer's research, depression research. You know, the reality is we have a lot of tools, we have a lot of evidence, we have a lot of information at our fingertips right now, but we're not using it. And I don't mean that I want all research to stop. What I mean by this is if I were to give my child a gift and they weren't to use those things, they were to ask for those things, they weren't to use it, and they weren't to use it properly, well then, you know what? The likelihood of me wanting to give them more things when they're not using the things that they've already been gifted or given. If science is not, if the medical model, if the medical system is not using the evidence information they have at their fingertips because it doesn't generate profits, well then I don't want to keep funding a system that's not going to use the tools that are right there, that have already been discovered, the ways in which we could already be helping people get out of a situation like depression. This lady, this patient, actually was dealing with depression for many, many years, had tried almost every single drug on the market, she said, and none of these medications worked. And you'll learn in a minute why that would be, why so many people or drugs fail so many people. She had a major gut issue, and that's why I really wanted to title this video Leaky Gut. The connection between leaky gut, depression, and diarrhea is because this woman's gut was so inflamed, so unhealthy, and with 95% of the serotonin in our bloodstream being produced in our digestive tract by our gut, well then, if she takes a drug that's a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, meaning it inhibits the reuptake or basically the elimination of serotonin from our bloodstream, if that's what that drug does, but there's no production going on or production's being significantly inhibited by inflammation and an infection in her digestive tract, how in the world is an SSRI ever going to make any big difference in that individual's mental health and depression? So we've got to use the knowledge we have. That's my point in saying this, because knowledge is not power. Because many people are given knowledge, they're given understanding, but when they don't apply that knowledge, and that's what I mean by we need science, we need physicians to apply the knowledge and evidence information that we have to help patients get well. And that's why I would rather say until we apply the tools that we already have, I don't think spending more money on figuring out more tools that, are we going to use them if we figure them out? So we already know science has proven that leaky gut, the gut-brain barrier, in major depressive disorders. This study I'll go in through more detail in the future. If you TWD in the links, I'm not going to go through each one of them. I'm not going to read these articles to you, these research journals, but I want you to have access to them so that you can be well informed for yourself, or you may be able to approach somebody who's dealing with depression and you can bring them this evidence so that it's not my personal opinion, it's not Dr. Dale bringing this evidence to the table. Well, I'm bringing the evidence to the table, but it's not my opinion that I'm bringing to the table. It's not my theory that I'm bringing to the table. I'm ultimately delivering to you the evidence that you need, that you would be capable of making an informed decision for yourself, ultimately using this knowledge, using it, and that will give you the power to get well. So TWD in the comments on Facebook and you get the links. If you're on YouTube in the future, or if you're on YouTube in the future, you're watching this right now, what you won't be able to do is type TWD into the comments. You've got to go into the description of the YouTube video, and if you do that, you'll be able to find a link there that will shoot you over to the website, thewilddoc.com. where I have a lot of videos there and educational materials and scientific research articles linked for you to access, but that's where you'll get the links to the articles and research journals that I'm discussing here in this video. If you all would, subscribe to the email campaign system, subscribe there so we can stay in contact if we're reduced our reach on Facebook and other avenues. So because I know natural healthcare, natural medicine is under attack when it comes to censorship from Facebook and different places. So if you're watching on the local television station here in Clarksville, Tennessee, we can be reached at 931-591-2010. You can visit our office on Wilma Rudolph Boulevard, 1715 Wilma Rudolph Boulevard if you want to visit us in person. But give us a call if you need help, or if you'd like these research articles and you need assistance in finding out or getting access to these articles, we'd help you out. So here we go. Your gut is directly connected to your brain by a newly discovered neuron circuit. Another journal as well, Biology, Mood, Anxiety Disorders, reconceptualizing or basically renaming a major depressive disorder as an infectious disease. So this is where science is headed and been headed for a while now, but a lot of people aren't being made aware of this evidence and information that could help them. The concept of depression as a dysfunction of the immune system, another great article for your reading pleasure. Is depression a kind of allergic disease? I thought this article is so this is a simple article to read. It's not a scientific journal, but it talks about some of the new science out there available to us. This researcher here from Stony Brook University in New York actually thinks infections are the most likely culprit, and even goes as far as saying and says that we should rebrand depression as an infectious, but not contagious disease. But yet the infection, if they have the infection, let's say a bacterial infection in the digestive tract, so there would be the oral fecal transmission or fecal to oral transmission possibility. So there'd be a chance there, but there are many different contributing factors that ultimately lead to somebody dealing with major depressive disorder. It's not just the infection, because a lot of people are exposed to parasites, to infectious agents, viruses, bacteria, chemicals, things like that. Some people will actually have the trauma to their cervical spine and neck and not still have depression. But you combine all of these factors, and this woman really had that perfect triangle of negative situations or past experiences. She had adverse childhood experiences. She had trauma to her cervical spine at a very, very young age, which really, really inhibits the body from functioning properly, then ultimately leads to a susceptibility for many other health situations to really break down the body and cause much greater harm. Again, having infections and things like that ultimately led to the situation where she dealt with depression for many, many years. So these are scientists. This is not me. I'm just going through the evidence. Think twice how your gut's second brain influences mood and well-being. Another great article that is very simple. It's a very simple read. Gastrointestinal GI turmoil can sour one's mood. I would agree with that. I used to deal with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, and when my digestive tract was upset, I was upset. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to be physically active. I just literally wanted the pain to stop. So, well-being may rely on messages from the brain below to the brain above. So in essence, what they're referring to there is they're saying that the brain, or the gut, is the second brain. So that's what they mean by the brain above and the brain below. So, for example, electrical stimulation of the vagus nerve, a useful treatment for depression. I kind of highlighted that because in medicine, or what most people wouldn't think about medicine being, science and research is now wanting to use electrical brain stimulation. They can hook up electrodes to the base of the neck or the base of the skull, just underneath the skull at the top of the neck. And they're doing that, and they're doing low electrical stimulation. And through this, it's like a TENS unit hooked up to the base of your skull, to the back of your neck. They do it more deep brain stimulation into the muscle fibers around the upper cervical spine. And through doing so, they can actually impact and upregulate the vagus nerve, which downregulates inflammation, and they can also give low electrical current feedback into the brain. See, the movement of our spine is a critical component of our brain health, because what they see is mood regulation is generated, or the electrical energy that is necessary for mood regulation is generated through the movement of our spine. And we have more mechanoreceptors in our cervical spine than anywhere else in our body. So if your spine, going back to, and I'll show you the research article in a second, that if somebody has a serious spinal injury, especially to their neck, or they undergo spinal fusion surgery, fusing the spine in the cervical spine, in the upper neck, especially downregulates the electrical generation that the mechanoreceptors, the joint receptors, generate that the brain needs to be able to control mood. So medicine is going in somewhat of the right direction. To me, I'm like, why isn't the body generating the electrical energy that is necessary for proper mood regulation and brain health? Why not restore that rather than hooking up an electrical device? So, patient symptoms. This was a female. She was 57 years old. Severe depression, anxiety, panic attacks so bad wake her up in a panic and frightened state. Confusion, memory loss. And this is reality. If we deal with inflammation, systemic inflammation, especially neural inflammation or brain inflammation long enough, we're eventually going to actually cause harm to our neurons, our brain health. They've even shown chronic depression, which is rooted in neural inflammation, whatever's causing that, they actually see that the brain can atrophy, the brain can shrink. Dealing with insomnia as well. So she first started this major issue, first started in 2003, significantly worsened in 2017. She'd seen multiple medical physicians, psychiatric doctors, been admitted, gone to the emergency room, been through basically so many different physicians in places, and no one could help her. One of the first things, as soon as she said, and I went through her history with her the first day I met her, I literally was like, if you're having diarrhea, has anybody tested your digestive tract? Has anybody figured out why you're having diarrhea every single day? This woman is 57 years old, and for months, she's been dealing with diarrhea to the point where she had to wear diapers. But nobody, and this is what I'm talking about. Knowledge isn't power unless we use the knowledge. So seeing psychologists, psychiatrists, medical physicians who were giving her these drugs, the science is there for them to read as well. And I'm just showing you a small portion of the science, showing there's a massive body of science showing us that the gut is directly connected to the brain, and our gut health can impact the health of our brain and cause depression. I mean, there's books on it now, Grain Brain and others, by eliminating gluten. And sometimes we could say it's not necessarily the gluten, it's probably the glyphosate that causes leaky gut. And when you look, there are laboratory, and even the laboratory testing, serum IgA or IgA and IgM levels, we can see that in those blood tests, it's so accurate, the level of leaky gut taking place. It's so accurate that it could be diagnostic in diagnosing somebody with depression. So just an example of, we have the evidence, we've got to use it, but nobody was using the evidence that we already had. No physician yet had tested her digestive tract and looked for why is her gut in shambles. So she had lost 70 pounds since January 2018. So in 1 year, she was literally looking pale, wasting away. It impacted every aspect of her life. Obviously, if somebody has severe diarrhea and wearing diapers, there's a level of shame that she dealt with that luckily now, not having to wear diapers has literally boosted her mood, that alone, I think, so we can't downplay just the fact that with the last 3 weeks of this woman not having to wear diapers and not dealing with diarrhea anymore, that alone boosted her mood. So we did initial testing, and to my surprise, we didn't come up with a lot of bacterial infections that are very common in depression, but that helped us eliminate the issues that we need to target. She had very few yeast, and so again, probably not a major component here. She had blood in her stool, but again, if her digestive tract, and I'll show you in just a second, if her digestive tract is this inflamed, which we found evidence of, if it's inflamed, it's going to cause problems. So I wasn't that concerned. It wasn't a massive amount or anything like that. And a lot of times that can come from hemorrhoids, that can come from, it wasn't the dark black where it would be digested blood, it was more red when we would see it in the stool. So short chain fatty acids, so we did some dietary changes with her, and we're doing some dietary changes, as I should say, because she's not completely healed yet. But short chain fatty acid deficiencies, she's at the higher level on one, but deficient on almost all the others. Total short chain fatty acids, so we actually do, for instances like this, we put her on a diet and suggested resistant starches, something that many people have never even heard of, and you mention it, resistant starch, can improve our overall health. Where do you get some of these resistant starches from? Green bananas, cooked starches. You got legumes, you got lentils, you got beans, you got potato starch, you've got rice. And what you do with like your rice and potatoes, you cook those and then you cool them and you eat them cold. And that's one of the best ways, or you could even do raw potatoes, and then that would give you that resistant starch. So I'm not going to read all that to you, but again, we're giving you resources, TWD in the comments, if you want the links to all the research or articles that I'm discussing here. So this was the major finding from this stool analysis. If you haven't had your digestive tract or your stool analyzed and you deal with depression, there's knowledge there for you to have to empower you to start figuring out how you could get over this depression. And granted, again, I'm not saying that a digestive tract would be the only cause in your situation. Everyone's situation is different. That is why we don't have a cookie cutter protocol in the Wellness Way. We look at all the factors that are playing a part in an individual's health crisis, and we help them restore the pieces of that puzzle. And if you're dealing with depression, with the massive evidence of a gut-brain connection, and the health of your gut largely impacting the health of your brain, if you haven't had that tested, please get it tested immediately. So her immune system was through the roof. This individual is actually the highest IgA, mucosal immune response, that I've seen yet. She's the one in the worst condition than I've ever seen. We're not talking about minor depression impacting. This woman couldn't drive herself anywhere. Some days wouldn't get out of bed. Needed help. And thank God for a dear friend of hers that would drive her here to the office for our care. Thank God for a loving father that would actually provide her with the opportunity, because trust me, somebody dealing with depression since what it was, I think it was 2003, because again, the notes from the beginning, dealing with it that long, this woman couldn't work. We've got to help people out of the depths of despair. So this was the major finding. Now, what this indicates is either we're dealing with a parasite infection or we're dealing with a viral infection, or at least what the laboratory can test for. We know that we're not dealing with a direct yeast overgrowth, and we're not dealing with a bacterial overgrowth that is common in major depressive disorder. But we know our immune system is going crazy, and we've got to use common sense here and say, why is her gut trying to, her immune system within her digestive tract, literally producing mucus and trying to remove something? So her body is trying to clear some sort of infection. So that is what we're after. Now, what we did early on is we already had her before we even did a stool analysis, we started working on her gut health. So we had changed her diet. We got her eating a lot of cruciferous vegetables. We already had done, before the stool test, results came back. We had already started her on an elimination diet, eliminating food allergies. We tested for that right off the bat. Able to reduce anything that would cause inflammation, both in the digestive tract or systemically throughout the body. eliminating both IgE immune food allergies as well as IgG immune allergies. So secretory IgA, the immune system within the gut or mucosal membranes primarily, it's one of our first line defenses against infection. It helps control inflammation, and when it's through the roof, trust me, we got an issue with inflammation. It regulates the immune response to a large degree, both internally within the mucosal membrane as well as systemically throughout the body. Elevated IgA levels will indicate an acute infection or even a chronic infection, but it indicates that there is an infection taking place. So if y'all haven't studied up or learned about leaky gut, hopefully by this time, most of my followers, most of my listeners know about leaky gut, know about the importance of the digestive tract. Hippocrates once said that disease begins in the gut, and I say it begins there, but it's not necessarily caused there. Again, what is causing her leaky gut would be what is ultimately leading down the path to developing the depression. So, and other factors, again, I cannot say that strongly enough. But leaky gut is basically where the cells, your gut lining is basically one cell side to side. They're literally. So that is the lining of your digestive tract before it gets into your bloodstream. So if you have an inflamed gut, and you can see this on the example I have in front of you, I don't know whether it would be the right side or left side. How would people be viewing it? What side is the inflammation on your screen, Anthony? Or what would be the inflammation side on a TV screen? Do you know?
It'd be the same side.
Same size I'm looking at it here. Okay, so I can turn around here and talk so that so I can see what people are seeing.
Yeah.
All right, so leaky gut, under the leaky gut illustration text, you can look straight down, you can see the redder cells, the lighter color cells on the left, mucosal membrane cells, you can see they're lighter color, so that's an example of what we should be. Those tight junctions should be very, very bound tightly. You can see it weakening in the middle and then eventually, and these are things, so you can have a gut infection, bad bacteria in there, you can have toxins, you can have viruses, you can have gluten, you can have glyphosate. One of the major issues with the consumption of genetically modified foods and foods, you have GMO corn that produces a biotoxin that kills the insects that eat it. You have GMO soybeans that are sprayed with glyphosate, and glyphosate literally kills insects and kills these things, kills the cells of plants through an effect that's going to negatively affect our cell membrane in our digestive tract. So leaky gut, inflamed, and then what happens is you can see those tight junctions are broken down, they're destroyed, they're harmed, and ultimately what you're now going to have is you're going to have things like gluten get into the bloodstream, then you can be sensitized against gluten. You can have bacteria get into the digestive tract, you can have viruses get into the digestive tract, and you have biotoxins and other toxins, chemical toxins, that now leach into the bloodstream, and after that happens, now your immune system systemically throughout your entire body is going to go berserk. It's going to go haywire, and that's going to cause more inflammation. But specifically with the digestive tract, you're going to have a connection there with the vagus nerve carrying, it's like 90% of the neurons, I believe they're estimating now, in the vagus nerve carry information from the gut to the brain. Not necessarily the other way around where your brain is signaling the majority information. The majority of your body and your nervous system is needed for sensatory input to the brain. So what that is your nervous system is sensing your environment. And sensation, that sensory input goes up to the brain interprets that information and then responds with output and signals back to the body. And through that pathway, if you have an inflamed gut, you are literally telling the brain that there is a sickness, there's a disease, there's an infection, we've got to fight something off. And then that when you see chronic fatigue, you look at pain sensitization, you look at depression. These are all sickness type. Everyone's gone through an acute infection, a short-term infection. Most people, when they have the cold or flu, there's a level of depression, there's a level of sometimes increased anxiety, there's a level of increased pain sensation. So this is what these individuals with a chronic infection in the digestive tract leading to inflammation of the brain through the gut-brain axis, what happens then is they're chronically in that state of a infection type response. So The gut-brain barrier and major depressive intestinal mucosal dysfunction with an increased intestinal mucosal dysfunction, we would refer to that as leaky gut. With an increased translocation of LPS from gram-negative enterobacteria, so this is bacteria in your digestive tract, leaky gut plays a role in the inflammatory physiology of depression. So the results of the present study show that patients with major depressive disorder, that's MDD, should be checked for the presence of leaky gut by the measurements of IgM and IgA against the LPS of gram-negative bacteria. What they're doing is they're doing a blood test. They're doing blood tests here to see if the immune system within the body is responding to gram-negative bacteria that should be in the gut or are infectious in the digestive tract. And when that occurs, it is a clear indicator that there is a breakdown in the tight junction. There is leaky gut going on. So that is one test that can be done. With hers, we did a stool analysis because we could look for what are the infections. If there were infections that were bacterial in nature, we would be able to have the lab test the sensitivity of those bacteria against different herbs, so we would know exactly what herbs would be able to start killing off those infections, thus reducing the immune response. We didn't find those infections being bacterial in nature, but we found that our immune system was going crazy. The fact that our immune system is going crazy means we're led then to believe and have to theorize and hypothesize that she's probably dealing with a parasite infection. And that's what she literally said for years. She felt just in her spirit that she'd been dealing with a parasite infection. And these are some of the responses you can get. And parasite infections are oftentimes difficult to be able to actually test for, both in stool samples. You could do a stool sample every day for a month maybe and you get the best results, but then you're going to spend thousands of dollars to do so to know that for sure you have a parasite. And the reality is we're using actually an herbal combination now with her, addressing the possibility of a parasite infection. We're using ones that are actually anti-inflammatory in nature, but also anti-autoimmune. There are certain herbs we're using. Wormwood right now is one of the major ones that we're using with her, and it actually has been shown to downregulate the inflammatory cytokine storm that is seen in autoimmune conditions. So there's a little extra information for people that are also dealing with immune dysregulation or autoimmune conditions. The results of the present study suggest that patients with major depressive disorder who have leaky gut, who have evidence that should be treated with a specific antioxidant and effective leaky gut and leaky gut diet. Things that will heal and seal the gut is what they're saying there. These entero being in your digestive tract, bacteria may act as a super antigens for T lymphocytes. So this is the way, I think this is really just kind of one my geekiness or nerdiness saying, okay, this is kind of cool. So these enterobacteria, certain bacteria can actually stimulate the immune system and induce autoimmunity through mechanisms which are called molecular mimicry. Basically, the bacteria and antigens on the surface of these bacteria are so similar to the same proteins and antigens on our cell surfaces within our body. Molecular mimicry. So they mimic what's in our body. So with that, it can be a serious problem and drive the development of autoimmune conditions. Certain enterobacteria that can reside in the digestive tract at low levels or pathogenic levels. If leaky gut is taking place, this may be explained since enterobacteria have antigenic sites that are very similar to those of the lipid structures of our neuronal tissue. So what that goes on to say there is there's this mimicry of the antigens that are on the bacteria that our immune system sees and says, okay, I gotta attack those and I'm gonna get rid of those and I'm gonna kill that bacteria off. Well, as your immune system's doing that, it's saying, I need to remember what this bacteria is. I need to remember how to recognize this bacteria for future bouts and battles against that same infection. So as it does that, if there's molecular mimicry going on and that infection is chronic, then you can have a spill over into attacking your neuronal tissue. So in essence, attacking your central nervous system or attacking your brain. And there are bacteria that have similar antigens to those found on our neuronal tissue, or our neurons. So systemic LPS caused by an increased translocation, that means basically leaky gut, allowing for constituents or products within your gut, lipopolysaccharides, getting into the digestive tract, not only induces peripheral inflammation, that's full body or external inflammation within the gut, and your gut inside your lining of your gut is actually outside your body, because it's the very, anyways, it's inside your body, but it's actually outside your body, kind of like a tube, I don't know. I'm not going to go into an explanation that too much, but also induces a central neural inflammation, or neuroinflammation, and eventually an autoimmune response directed against neural tissue. So if you have leaky gut long enough, you can eventually develop a central nervous system autoimmune condition. Let's think about Lou Gehrig's disease, certain types of dementia, MS, multiple sclerosis. We've got to check the gut, and we've got to heal the gut if we want to help these people. We have the knowledge. Let's enact and use that knowledge to gain power against these diseases and help people out. Another major study here, and I'll actually read this one to you, or part of it, a quote from here: leaky gut biomarkers in depression and suicidal behavior. So inflammation is associated with major depressive disorder, MDD, and suicidal behavior. According to the leaky gut hypothesis, increased intestinal permeability may contribute to this relationship via bacterial translocation across enterocytes. So another major research study actually being published in 2019 talking about the leaky gut hypothesis. Again, science will have to consider it a hypothesis until it's accepted as fact. But with multiple recent research studies over 10, 20, 30 years, and even claims and hypotheses going on before that, and seeing depression in individuals with major digestive tract problems, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, depression is very, very prevalent in those subpopulations of our communities. If we can heal the gut, we can help somebody with depression. So the gut-brain axis, the missing link in depression. The gut microbiota is essential to human health and immune system and plays a major role in bidirectional communication between the gut and the brain. Based on evidence, the gut microbiota, that would be the good bacteria or the makeup of all the bacteria, viruses, parasites, and different things in the digestive tract. The microbiota is associated with metabolic disorders such as obesity, diabetes, mellitus. This is why I've recently started working with individuals. I've got several patients that we've helped out with chronic inability to lose weight, and we test their digestive tract. They've got really low growth and a lot of the good bacteria. You search out what are the factors that are causing their poor health or poor health outcomes, inability to lose weight or severe obesity, and gut bacteria balance makes a huge, takes a huge part in that. So diabetes, neuropsychiatric disorders, schizophrenia, autistic disorders, anxiety disorders, and major depressive disorders. This is why checking and looking at the gut health is one of the, I call it the foundation. I tell people, if we could look at whatever we can do to critique your diet to lower inflammation, whatever we can do to make sure that your gut is as healthy as it possibly can be, and then if we can make sure that your spine and your nervous system is healthy as it can be, those are the primary three factors that I can really, really help somebody with. The things that are difficult to help somebody with, let's say with depression, is situations that they are surrounded by on a daily basis, their daily life. Let's say it's a poor relationship. It's the loss of a loved one in their past that they're having difficulty getting over. These types of things, and you shouldn't have to get over it. It's just, you got to get to a point where I would hope that you know that they're in heaven, you come to know the Lord, and if you know the Lord, you'll see Him again, and you can rest and be happy and glad in the fact that you'll see Him again. That's what I would love to say to anyone out there in that situation. But we can help people with these issues if we look at the gut health. The gut microorganisms are capable of producing and delivering neuroactive substances such as serotonin, gamma, aminobutyric acid, which act on the gut-brain axis. So again, more and more studies. There is direct connection, massive direct connection between the brain and the digestive tract. And it's not just this neural circuitry connection, it is the health of the digestive tract that can be the factor in brain health problems. And also, when we go through emotional traumas, or even physical traumas that can disrupt that circuitry, that can cause problems in the communication from the gut to the brain and the brain to the gut. So you can have an emotional trauma and that can cause you to have a digestive tract problem. Anxiety in a situation, in a stressful environment that you deal with on a daily basis, if your job is stressful, there are people that have digestive problems every day they go to work because their job is stressful. They have anxiety going to work. So that reality, we know that the brain can cause, it's psychovisceral. It's where the psychology, the psychological state negatively impacts the visceral, which is the organ system function. And then there is also what's called somatovisceral or somatopsycho. So what we can have is somatic being the musculoskeletal system of the body. We can have spinal traumas and injuries that actually cause distortions in the communication. They disrupt the normal signaling. Basically, I liken it to if your brain is trying to communicate to your organs of your body, like your digestive tract, or your digestive tract is trying to communicate back up to the brain for both bidirectional health. So the health of your brain, depending on the health of your gut, the health of your gut, dependent on the health of the brain. If you have a distorted spine, if you have a spine that is out of alignment, it's deteriorating, and you have pressure, tension, or distortion of the nervous system, you're going to have a distortion in the communication. What I liken it to is if your brain is communicating to your digestive tract, or your digestive tract is communicating to your brain, and they're trying to call each other on a phone and communicate for proper function and proper health. But there's a short circuiting going on. There's distortion in the signal. You can't hear them properly. Well, then you're going to get a miscommunication there, and you're going to get malfunction. You're going to get disease state set in. So that is why I'm going to kind of hammer this section as well. This is her neck. If Anthony pops that up on the screen, you will see multiple areas of her cervical spine. The major issue here is she's got we got C4, 5, 6, and 7. So we've got germ disc disease between C4 all the way down to C7. So that's more than 50% of the vertebra or the motion units in her neck are deteriorating. And this isn't just a light degree. This is a 57-year-old woman with a spine that I don't commonly see. I have looked at thousands of x-rays over the years. And this is, again, for her age, one of the worst spines that I typically see. Multiple areas of disc deterioration taking place. She's got a bone spur posterior to C4 and C5, posterior bone spurs. She's got tons of anterior bone spurs, and that's not really an issue. When we start getting posterior bone spurs, posterior means on the back side of the vertebral body, she's going to have bone spurs that are poking back against the spinal cord. That causes direct irritation to the central nervous system, causing a lot more distortion in the signaling. She has a complete loss of curve here. The loss of curve, when you look at a neck x-ray from the side like this, you should actually be seeing a C-shaped curve where it actually curves forward. All right, so if there is no C-shaped curve, we have tension on the cervical spine, we have tension on the cervical muscles, the back of the neck, and we also have tension on the spinal cord. That dural tension, that spinal cord tension, can induce a sympathetic stress response that can basically cause the brain and body to feel as if it's in a fight or flight scenario or situation. If someone is running from a tiger, trust me, they're going to feel there's going to be a level of anxiety, there's going to be a level of depression, even if they were feeling even if the tiger wasn't directly chasing them, but there was a threat in their immediate vicinity, there's going to be a level of anxiety. So this is a major contributing factor, but this is what I was talking about. Her brain, with this misalignment, with this deterioration taking place, cannot communicate down to her digestive tract appropriately, and it's also activating a sympathetic or fight or flight response, which negatively impacts digestive tract health. It also can weaken the immune system over time. Initially, during an acute phase of stress response, you have an upregulation of the inflammatory immune response. You have an upregulation in preparation for a potential invader. But over the long term, it's going to eventually lead to an immune deficiency. But with her case, she's still dealing with that pro-inflammatory immune response. We also did some other x-rays of her atlas vertebra, which we found rotated. We are actually working on that as well. But here is a study that I like to use because it shows you that within the scientific literature, this is not a chiropractic journal. The journal, the Spine Journal, is actually generated through medical physicians. This is a research article on cervical fusion or neck fusion. So again, doing a cervical spinal surgery procedure that fuses or doesn't allow the vertebra to move any longer. So this is an MD, 2 and 3 PhDs that put this together. But if you read this, and I'm going to read the entire conclusions because I kind of find it very ironic that we still use this in so many people who are dealing with spinal injuries, that are dealing with cervical chronic pain, primarily from cervical disc deterioration. Workers' compensation patients with chronic disabling work-related cervical spinal disorders who undergo cervical fusion, they'll undergo this expensive surgery that can cost tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes, combined with functional restoration, so like physical therapy, have socioeconomic outcomes. So their outcomes after this surgery, this extremely expensive, extremely dangerous, and oftentimes harmful surgery, they have statistically similar outcomes to unoperated controls. So actually looking at doing a surgery and taking a group of individuals with cervical spine problems, chronic pain, degenerative disc disease, and then putting some into a group that they're going to do surgery, and doing some and taking some of those individuals and not doing surgery, and then watching their outcomes over the long term. Watch this. Surgery patients had higher rate of additional healthcare seeking behaviors from new providers, more medical physicians or other practitioners, and a greater likelihood of being clinically depressed before and after rehabilitation. What does that mean? There was no improvements for the majority of people. Again, there is a time and place for a skilled physician, a skilled surgeon to do a surgery that could literally save or change a person's life. I mean, I have had patients where they literally lost use of their arm. They were literally dealing with a level of paralysis in one side of their body, having such compression on the cervical nerves that go into the arm, having a decompressive surgery there, and then ultimately getting use of their arm back. So surgeons can be amazing in a situation like that. But so often, for so many spinal conditions like degenerative disc disease, we have pressure, we have tension, but it's not causing paralysis. It's causing chronic pain. And a lot of the pain comes about from the inability for those cervical vertebrae to actually move. And movement, again, is the way in which our body generates an electrical energy that is necessary for our brain to function properly, for us to control pain, and for us to control our mood. So everyone needs that. So what happens if we actually do a cervical fusion? We're eliminating all that movement. And if we eliminate movement, guess what? That person can't regulate their mood appropriately. They can't actually regulate pain appropriately. That is why 70% of the time they estimate cervical or even all spinal fusions fail immediately, 70% of the time. In fact, there was actually a committee hired by the US government to evaluate whether spinal fusions were effective or worthless. Out of 9 committee members, they actually noted there was significant bias on the committee members' parts, multiple owning stock or having patents on implantable devices they use, like the screws, the nuts, the bolts, those things that they put into the spine, they implant. So these individuals would make a lot of money if they continued to use spinal fusions. Out of these 9 committee members, on a scale of 1 to 5, I thought it was ironic that they used a scale of 1 to 5. It wasn't 0 to 5, it was 1 to 5. So if you read it, I'm like, why not 0? Why exclude 0? So 1 to 5, what was the benefits? They voted a 1.5. In the vast majority of cases, actually seeing harm done to patients rather than benefit done. And again, I'm not saying every single case, but the vast majority cause serious harm. So, by having serious depression afterwards, there's the connection between spinal mobility, the necessity of spinal mobility, and our mental health. So, what do we do for this lady, and what have we been doing? Here are answers. Here are the things that can begin to help somebody overcome depression or get their body healthy enough. Again, there are many, many different factors that play a part in this. There are emotional traumas, there are childhood experiences, there's abuse, there's neglect, there's tons of things. So the emotional component, all right, has to be addressed as well. But the things that we were able to do in my clinic, we were able to help her. We started chiropractic care, getting motion. Her spine releases. When we first started adjusting this woman's spine, her spine, or I did, her spine barely moved at all. Her range of motion was so limited, she could literally not look over her shoulder. Her range of motion is significantly improved. She is now feeling that mobility, and we're achieving that mobility through the adjustments and the exercises that we've been giving her to do at home. We have begun to clear infections and sources of inflammation, and this is the things that are ongoing that we're working with. These are not things that we have completed just yet. Cleansing her body of any parasite, we are working to increase and improve the balance of her immune system, and it's more about increase the balance than it is just promote and strengthen the immune system. So we are avoiding, or she is avoiding her food allergies, something that she was able to do right away after we did some blood work on her. Dietary changes, in addition to avoiding her food allergies, specific dietary protocols, again, like resistant starches, increasing resistant starches, eating a lot of cruciferous vegetables, beginning to detox or prep her body for detoxification that we'll be doing in the future. We've been working on healing her leaky gut. And by doing so, using herbs and supplements, we've been able to get her to the point where now she's been no longer needing diapers and no longer having diarrhea. Today, well, it'd probably be a little bit over 3 weeks now, but she's been no longer dealing with diarrhea. Thus, she doesn't need diapers anymore. She's been driving herself to the clinic for several weeks now because of her mood is improved. And her level of anxiety, she would get severe anxiety from driving. She's no longer dealing with that nearly as much. She still deals with some of it. She's gaining weight. Her complexion has improved. This is one of the coolest things. When I started seeing, I literally was like, okay, so she came in one day and I'm like, you look better. You physically look better. Your color looks better. She was beginning to smile and she was beginning to respond to just interaction, jokes, and things like that. And when I saw her color starting to change, I was literally like, so how's your gut feeling and doing? Are you still having the diarrhea? And that was when she's like, no, I haven't had diarrhea for several days now. And her color immediately started to improve. Her mood has improved. Again, it's still not where we need it or where she needs it and where she wants it. So we're going to continue to work with her. She's able to drive and travel places by herself. She doesn't need somebody to drive her around town. She's improved in her interactions with others, and she's begun to smile and laugh. So this is what can be done. And she's on a path, and she's just on the beginning of the path. So I'm a praying man, and I pray over her, and I would ask everybody to say prayers for her because she's still at the very beginning stages. There's hope at the end of the tunnel and the darkness that she's been in for years now, but we have to stay on the path. We have to use the knowledge that's available to us all, and when we apply that knowledge, we are able to give people power to overcome their health struggles. So I want to ask and plead with everybody, share this information. Don't just like it. Sharing it is the only way we're really going to be able to save lives and help people. Help us get this information out there.